Hello, Internet. It is I, Malik Aaron, and welcome back to Box Office Predictions. I know this video is coming out way later than it should, but last night I went to SmackDown, like live in person, which was fun, but by the end of the night I was very exhausted, and I kind of just passed out in bed. And so, yeah, that's why I'm doing this at the time I'm doing it. But, anywho. Today we're going to be talking about Superman, or James Gunn's Superman. So as usual, we're going to be going over the pros and cons. So let's get to it. Pros, Superman. Who doesn't know who Superman is? I mean, you really have to be living under a rock to not know. But when people think of like superheroes, Superman is like the first thing that pops up because he's kind of like the first superhero in a lot of people's eyes. This is the first mainstream one. And, he's been around for almost a century, I think. Maybe more than a century. I'm not sure when his exact debut is, but it's probably around a century or so. And he's basically been like the face of DC, like the main DC superhero. Batman's like right next to him. And, obviously there's a history of comics and shows and games, but it's best we don't talk about the games for obvious reasons. Because of, Superman 64 and all that. But it also has a history of movies, a rather long history of movies. Starting with the original back in 1978. Yes, that's how long it was when the first Superman movie came out. So yeah, the first Superman movie, star Christopher Reeve as Superman. It's considered like a classic. It's a huge success. This was like I'm not sure if this was the first superhero movie. It was the first, mainstream superhero movie. It's kind of like the granddaddy of like a lot of superhero movies nowadays. And yeah, I mean, it's like a beloved movie. Then you have Superman 2, which, went through quite a bit of drama behind the scenes where actually Superman 1 and 2, I think they were filmed simultaneously, but the original director, Richard Donner, he got fired while Superman 2 was being made. And so they replaced him with another guy. And with someone else. I don't remember who it was, but he was replaced, and the movie still came out. The movie was still rather well received despite these issues. But it wouldn't be until like 2006 where they decided to release like the Richard Donner cut of Superman 2. But like Superman 1 and 2 are like well received movies. And okay, I guess I'll save Superman 3, Superman 4, I guess Supergirl 2. I'll save those for the cons because all three of those movies are just big old yikes. The Superman Returns, also kind of a yikes too. But Man of Steel, that was a hit, despite its very, very polarizing reception. It made money. And then Batman v Superman and Justice League. It's hard to talk about these movies so they get a positive light because there's a lot of negativity surrounding them. So I'll just save them for later. But yeah, still Superman, everyone knows who Superman is. Like, brand name recognition is, obvious pro right there. And plus, he has had movies that have been well liked, have been, fairly successful for the, sometimes. But, I mean, his last movie, Man of Steel, that was a legitimately big hit. I think it was one of the biggest hits of 2013. So, yeah. Superman as a character, I'll label him as a pro. Another pro, this movie is made by James Gunn. This is very, very important because, this man right here, he's not only just directing this movie, this man is basically running DC on film and TV. Like, he's running the whole thing. He's running DC Studios along with Peter Safran. But people like view James Gunn as like kind of like the Kevin Feige of the DC Studios. And it's so strange because originally, like, he started just making, you know, low budget like horror movies, like stuff like Slither. He wrote the live action Scooby Doo movies, which explains why they were so batshit, but also so like, you know, weirdly good at the same time. But then things changed for him. He got the call from Marvel. It's just like, hey, we're making a Guardians of the Galaxy movie. You want to do it? And he's like, sure. And Guardians of the Galaxy was like such a risk at the time because no one knew who any of those characters were. But thanks to some really good marketing and good reviews, it managed to be a smash hit. It was like the brightest spot. What was a very bleak summer movie season back in 2014, making like $770 million. Then obviously that came the sequel, which did even better, naturally. And then, things were gonna go normally with Guardians 3, but then people unearthed some rather problematic tweets James Gunn made like in 2010 or so, and it got him fired from Guardians 3 to like the shock of everybody. But what? But even after that, Warner Brothers, they saw an opportunity because with their Suicide Squad movie, the first one, it was a hit, but nobody liked it. But they're gonna make a sequel anyway, and they were kind of like, I guess, struggling with it. I think Gavin O'Connor was supposed to make it, but then that version, they just said, nah, we don't want that. So they went to James Gunn's like, hey, you made Guardians of the Galaxy, you made a great team-based movie. Can you do that for us? And James was like, sure. Which led to The Suicide Squad. And then the dude would even get like rehired to make Guardians 3. So he was basically doing both Marvel and DC projects at the same time. So it worked out great for him. Yeah, The Suicide Squad, that was his first DC movie. And even though it was a flop, partially because of, COVID affected market, and the fact that it was a part of the infamous HBO Max experiment. I'm glad I can say HBO Max experiment because it's back to being that. No more Max, just now HBO Max again. But yeah, despite being part of that experiment, it was received very well. I'd say this was the best DC EU movie, probably next to Wonder Woman. Like, this is like the best one. And so Warner Brothers obviously is very confident in like James Gunn's vision. They're like, we like what you're doing. How about you run the whole thing? like your vision isn't just, subjected to just like Suicide Squad and like Peacemaker. We want you to do the whole thing. Which led to his role, as one of the main guys at DC Studios. And, obviously after Suicide Squad, there's Peacemaker, the show, which was a hit. We're about to get season 2 of that next month. And then he made Guardians 3, which, did pretty good. I thought it would make $1 billion, but these numbers aren't bad. So he ended his Marvel run like on a strong note, really strong note. And then here we are with Superman. So, yeah, James Gunn has he has a lot of clout to his name when it comes to like superhero movies, whether it be his Marvel stuff and now his DC stuff. So, yeah, James Gunn is like a big selling point here because, especially considering this is like the start. Well, technically it's not because we had Creature Commandos last year, but that was like an animated show. Okay, that's just TV. For like this is like the movie debut of the DC, of the new like DC universe, the DCU. So having like James Gunn's name, the fact that he basically made the movie, I say that's a big selling point. So that's a pro. James Gunn's name. Another pro is the fact that reviews for this movie are quite good. Has an 82% critic score, a 94% audience score. Its cinema score is an A minus, which is solid. I'm not sure what Man of Steel did. Man of Steel got an A minus too. Okay. What about Superman Returns? That got a B plus. Oh, Superman 4 got a C, which, so I'm surprised that's not a D considering the quality of that movie. But yeah, in terms of cinema scores, this is like the best of like the Superman movies, like tied with Man of Steel. So that's a good sign. So yeah, word of mouth across the board is quite good. So I will label that as a pro. Another pros, Thursday previews, excellent. Made 22.5 million. Granted, some of that money came from like early screenings, like on Tuesday for like Amazon Prime screenings, but only kind of like a small amount. Like I think it's 2.8 million. So a large chunk of that came from Thursday. So around like 20 million or so came from Thursday. So let's compare it out with some other movies. Show you like how good this really is. I mean, it destroys all recent DC movies. It's way past anything that came out in like 2023. But slightly better than Barbie. It's better than the Batman, which I think is a really good comparison. Considering Superman's a reboot, just like how the Batman was a reboot, even though the Batman's is in its own bubble. It's not connected to the DCU, but they're both reboots of iconic characters. So I say it's a fair comparison. Yeah, did better than the Batman, did better than the first Suicide Squad, did better than like Wicked, Top Gun Maverick, better than quite a few movies, better than all the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, which I say is a good sign. It's the best of the year by far and away, beating like Lilo and Stitch by like a fair amount. So, yeah, I say Superman, in terms of previews, like these are really good previews. And I think that puts it in a really good position this weekend. So, yeah, I mean, it's not the best for DC. I'm pretty sure the best for DC was Batman v Superman. I'm pretty sure. Either that or Dark Knight Rises. One of the two. But those movies end up being like hella front loaded, at least opening weekend. Well, Batman v Superman, that was just front loaded, period. Its whole run. But for Dark Knight Rises, that was front loaded, but that was a good amount of that was due to unfortunate real life tragedy with like the massacre. But Superman previews, excellent. So that's a pro. Another pro I can think of, well, competition is minuscule. This is the only movie coming out this weekend. I mean, the only other big movie that's out right now is like Jurassic World Rebirth, but that movie's gonna get hurt by Superman because that's what happens when you have like blockbuster movies coming out like back to back. Like yeah, Blockbuster 1 and then Blockbuster 2 comes out. Blockbuster 1 is gonna get hurt. Like that's how it works. That's how it's always worked. It's rare when like two blockbusters can like, especially if they're targeting like basically the same target audience, that they coexist. Like it's happened. Like say Moana 2 and Wicked, both female-centric musical movies, they managed to thrive together instead of like killing each other. But that's kind of rare though. But yeah, Jurassic World Rebirth I think will be hurt by Superman. There won't be like next week. It is kind of a nothing burger. I mean, movies are coming out, but none of them stand a chance against Superman. Now, the week after that, with Fantastic Four, that will hurt Superman because, obvious direct competition right there. But that's 2 weeks away. So Superman has 2 weeks to play out before it deals with anything serious. So, but yeah, lack of like real serious competition. I will label that as a pro. Um, any other pros I can think of? Mm, Not really. I think I mentioned like all the major stuff. Okay, cons. Okay, okay, some of these don't really apply now, but I should mention it anyway. So Superman has had a bit of a rather cursed history on film. I mentioned all the good parts. Now it's time to mention all the bad. So Superman 1 and 2, fine. Nothing to say about them. Superman 3, that's where everything goes wrong. That's where things really got to start going downhill. So Superman 3 was a rather ill-fated project. I think I had Richard Pryor in there, which a lot of people thought was just a huge mistake. It just didn't work. And the movie was just seen as like really shitty, really campy, just bad, just straight up trash. Although people did like, I think there was like a dark Superman or like a more depressed Superman, and people did like that. That was like the only aspect of the movie people liked. Other than that, people thought the movie was trash. But it was nothing compared to the absolute garbage heap that was Superman 4. But there's also Supergirl, which was hella bad too, and nobody watched. But Superman 4, that was a whole nother level of awful. Like, Superman 4, not only was it a bomb, at the box office, but, quality wise, it was just horrific. Like, I've never seen the movie in full, but I remember seeing reviews of it. And yeah, the movie was absolute ass. Just like, why did they make this? It was so low budget, so just trashy. And then you had like he was going up against Nuclear Man, and like the fights they had were just iconic for all the wrong reasons. And yeah, this movie was so bad it killed the franchise for 20 years. This was to Superman what Batman Robin was to Batman. Like it was like a franchise destroying movie. So yeah, Superman 4, the big yikes. Like the biggest yikes like you can possibly imagine. So this led to 20 years of trying to like figure out, okay, what do we do with Superman? Led to a lot of projects. Superman 5 was like, for some reason, was like thought about. But then I think Christopher Reeve, he got paralyzed, so that project became an impossibility. Then the most infamous canceled Superman movie was Superman Lives from Tim Burton. We were supposed to have Nicolas Cage as Superman. They got as far as trying to make a suit for him and everything. But then that never got off the ground. Despite spending like millions of dollars before he can even like start filming. So, yeah, that was like the most infamous cancellation. Then I think Superman Flyby was another project, but that never got off the ground. We were supposed to get a Batman v Superman movie back like in 2004. Can you believe that? Good decade before it became a reality. But we were supposed to get that. That didn't get off the ground. But then eventually they found something with Superman Returns. They finally had a script, a vision, like, okay, we're going to go with that. So then it led to Superman Returns in 2006. When it pops up eventually. Hopefully. Like, things being very difficult. But I guess I'll talk about it now a little bit. So, Superman Returns. It's basically Superman 2.5, where like Superman 1 and 2 exist, but 3 and 4 don't. So it just erases them from the timeline. But honestly, they really should have just made this a reboot, because doing something like that is just going to confuse people. But anywho, So yeah, Superman Returns apparently had like a lot of hype surrounding it because Superman's return after like 20 years of being away on the big screen. So it had a lot of hype, a lot of buzz initially, but apparently the buzz just kind of like petered out. It just kind of like fizzled because when it released, like it didn't do terrible financially, but it didn't do great either. Opened by 52 million, basically, opened like midweek. So yeah, in the 7 day stretch, it made like 108 million, but that was below a lot of people's expectations. And then just got steamrolled by I think it was Pirates of the Caribbean: Dead Man's Chest. It ended up making it just scratched and clawed to 200 million domestically, and ended up making 391 million worldwide on a budget of like 232 million. Granted, that doesn't even include. I'm not sure if that includes all the money that was spent on those canceled Superman movies, but yeah, it wasn't like a bomb per se, but it certainly wasn't the hit Warner Brothers wanted. But they still were just like, we're gonna make a sequel anyway, and like the sequel was planned. It was supposed to be released in 2009, but then shit just kept popping up with like scheduling conflicts and stuff. And ultimately, the movie was, left unmade, and it never got off the ground, which resulted in them hitting the reboot button, which is what they probably should have done in the first place. But yeah, Superman Returns just wasn't the movie it should have been. And like kid me did not like the movie. Adult me doesn't really like the movie either. I thought the movie was just hella boring. I know the movie has its fans, but I am not one of them. I can tell you that. So now we move on to Man of Steel, one of the few successful Superman movies here. But even then, the from like a quality perspective, this movie was like extremely divisive. People didn't like how like dark and gloomy the movie was. People especially didn't like how Superman straight up murdered General Zod, snapping his neck because he was about to kill like some random family. People just felt like it was like OOC, like out of character for Superman to do such a thing. But even though they liked Henry Cavill as Superman, he was it. Like he was Superman. He had the look, he had everything, but the writing constantly failed him. And it sucks, but because he was a good Superman, he had a great look and everything, but again, writing failed him. Yeah, Man of Steel was divisive, but it made money. So they're like, let's keep going, which led to Batman v Superman, a movie I still remember to this day when this shit was announced. Like, I was at Comic Con 2013. Like, 13-year-old me lost my mind at that announcement. I was like, holy shit, Batman and Superman on the big screen together. Oh my god. Like, it felt like a dream, like an absolute dream. Little did everyone know that dream would turn to an absolute nightmare. Because, and the thing is, like when this movie was, when like trailers were popping up, originally my hype level kept constantly going up, down, up, down, up, down. Like started on a high. Then some of the casting choices, like Ben Affleck as Batman, I was like, okay. Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman, okay. Then Jesse Eisenberg's Lex Luthor, I was like, I don't know about that. Like, if. And then, like, the first trailer hit, like, I think it was April of 2015. It didn't really show much, but I was like, okay. But then the Comic Con trailer from 2015, that trailer was awesome. I don't care what anybody says. That is one of the best superhero trailers I have ever seen. Like, straight up. Like, that trailer was fucking epic. So it got my hype up again. Like, hell yeah, this movie's gonna be amazing. And then the Doomsday trailer happened, and then my hype just went down quite a bit. Because Doomsday didn't look like Doomsday at all. It looked like Abomination's cousin. And just the fact they would show that in the trailer, I'm just like, why? Why would you do that? But yes, that trailer like dampened things. And the movie came out, reviews were absolute shit. They were terrible. But I was still holding out hope that, this movie might still be all right. Then I watched it, and I'm pretty sure I gaslit myself into thinking, oh, it wasn't that bad. But like years later, I'm just like, that movie really wasn't that good. Like, it had elements I liked. I liked the fight between Batman v Superman. I liked the opening scene where it showed like Bruce Wayne's his parents' death and the way that was done. I really like that. I liked Batman, Bruce Wayne as Bruce Wayne, Ben Affleck as Batman. Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman was also good. It had elements of good, but there was a lot of bad surrounding this movie. Jesse Eisenberg's Lex Luthor just did not work at all, which sucks because I know Jesse Eisenberg could pull that role off. I've seen him in The Social Network. Okay, I know he could do it, but again, writing just failed everybody. And then the ending I thought was just, Superman's sacrifice I thought was just unnecessary. Then of course, how can we forget the Martha scene? That's a that's a infamous moment in superhero movies where, you know, Batman's trying to kill Superman, and then Superman's just like, save Martha. And then Batman's like, why did you say that name? Because both their mothers had the same name. It was real stupid. But the movie, despite having like such a strong opening, the best opening for all DC movies, it crashed and burned right after that. It's like from opening day to like third day, you can see it just plummeting, like to like a at the time record drop for like its opening for second Friday, 82%. It just fell and fell and fell to oblivion. Like domestically, this lost to Deadpool. Like if you were to tell anyone, oh, Deadpool's gonna make more money domestically than Batman v Superman, people thought you lost your mind. But that's what happened. And then this led to Justice League, which I know like, well, they tried to hide Superman in the advertising, but everyone knew damn well he was in the movie. He was like an important aspect of the movie, so I guess we'll talk about it too. And it led to like a real infamous moment because, Henry Cavill at the time when they were doing like reshoots for Justice League, because the movie like filmed and everything, but then Zack Snyder had to like step off the project due to a very personal tragedy. I think his daughter committed suicide, so naturally he would, leave the project. Very understandable. Like, family's important. You need to like, be with them and not like, drown yourself in work. Then he was replaced by Joss Whedon because they thought, oh, Joss Whedon made the Avengers movies. They were successful. Let's get him to fix this. He'll do it. Spoiler alert, he did not. But when they were doing reshoots, Henry Cavill was busy filming Mission Impossible Fallout at the time, and his character in that movie had a mustache. And he was, I shit you not, contractually obligated to keep that mustache. He could not shave it off or nothing. So, Warner Brothers, in their infinite wisdom, decided, you know what, let's just digitally remove his mustache in post. Let's do that. It'll look great. Spoiler alert, it looked like it looked so bad. Like, holy shit. You look at his lip and you could just tell something is not right. It doesn't look natural at all. It just it's just terrible. And the Justice League theatrical cut was just bad. A straight up bad movie. It almost made me quit watching DC movies, period. That's how bad it was. And yeah, and the movie was a bomb too. It cost like $300 million because of all those reshoots, and it only made like $660 million. Like Guardians of the Galaxy did better than this, and Guardians of the Galaxy was based off like essentially a bunch of nobodies. Like, this is Justice League. This is their equivalent to the Avengers. This should have made $1 billion easy, and it didn't. And Batman v Superman and Justice League will forever haunt Warner Brothers. Those failures will forever haunt them. But then, because of the way, things went with Zack Snyder leaving the project and Joss being taken over, people were like, oh, we want the Snyder cut. And the years years of people clamoring for it to release, clamoring for it to exist. And then Warner Brothers ultimately relented. They're like, all right, fine, you're gonna get the Snyder Cut, and then they got it like in 2021 on HBO Max. It was released there, and people generally like it. I've still yet to see it. That's a 4 hour movie, man. That's an endurance test right there. I gotta prepare myself for that. But then this leads to my next con. Well, it's not really a con. It's just something I want to mention because there's been a lot of talk about it like for the last few days and for the last while too. Really, Snyderverse fans, ick. Ugh. Huh. Now, just a heads up: if you are someone who happens to just like Zack Snyder movies and is not a part of that group, then you're not the problem. You're cool with me. But my problem is with like these, I guess, Snyderverse, a lot of them like on Reddit. These people, like, they are so dead set against this new Superman. They're so dead set against like James Gunn because, the Snyderverse died. Warner Brothers pulled the plug on that and then gave the reins to James Gunn. And they took it so personally, like, James Gunn like murdered their family or something. Like, they took it so personally, and it's just absurd and sad, really. Like, there was even like this little like movement they tried to do, like where people were just gonna intentionally leave like bad reviews on Superman. They're just gonna boycott the movie, and I'm just like, what are you people doing? Like it's pathetic, honestly. you know, they see like Zack Snyder as like the Messiah, and they see James Gunn as like the Antichrist, and I'm just like, bro, it's not that serious. Like, but they take it like so seriously, and like, look, okay, this is me coming from like being a TMNT fan. This is like an example, like Rise of the TMNT. Do I like Rise of the TMNT? Yes. Was it a crime how it was canceled the way it was? Yes. Did I root against TMNT, like Mutant Mayhem? Did I want that to crash and burn? Did I want that to fail? No. No, because I was mature about it and I was like, well, this is done, but I'm gonna give the new one a chance. I'm gonna see how it is. I was like, what they're doing is just so petty and childish. Like, it's just embarrassing. It's embarrassing behavior, really. Because look, Henry Cavill's Superman was good. Bad writing failed him. Like, Warner Brothers made so many bad decisions with that universe that it was just doomed to collapse. So yeah, but you gotta move on. Like, the standard, it happened. Move on. It's not coming back. Honestly, it makes me feel like releasing the Snyder Cut was a huge mistake because it just gave these people more fuel, to like, be hella annoying, because Snyderverse fans are some of the most annoying people on the internet. Like, really, it's like, I'm not saying they're the worst fan base, but they're up there. they're they're not quite at the top, but they're like almost near the top in terms of how annoying they are, how they'll never shut up about the Snyderverse, and how, they want it back. They don't want James Gunn's universe. So yeah, I just wanted to talk about that because this has been talked about quite a lot the last few weeks, especially recently. So yeah, but it's not really a con. It's just something I want to bring up. In terms of other cons, um, but I guess the big con is that Superman's had a cursed history on film. But I guess the only other real con is that Fantastic Four is coming in 2 weeks, and that's going to hurt this movie. But besides that, I can't really think of anything else. I really can't. I mean, I know this movie got thrown into the culture war, because of course it did, where James Gunn said, Superman was basically an immigrant, which he is. Objectively, he's an alien from another planet who his planet blew up, came to a new planet. That's literally the definition of an immigrant. But people didn't like that, and so let's say this little culture war there with, like, a lot of conservatives being like, "Oh, this Superman's all woke and shit," and I just completely ignore that because I think the whole thing is really stupid but, and a waste of time. And I'm not gonna use like any, I'm not gonna spend any of my time because I like having brain cells and I don't want them to disintegrate by paying attention to that. Yeah, I wanted to mention that too, just briefly. But yeah, so opening weekend. Okay, so I know there's a lot to talk about with this because this movie, it's a very big deal. But yeah, box office wise, opening weekend. This is as of Friday. These could change. These will literally probably change in like an hour or so. But Friday is projected to hit like 115 million. But keep in mind this is yesterday, so things could change. Things could go up, down. Who knows? But yeah, this was projected. I think it will go up because there is a nice amount of enthusiasm surrounding this movie. So I'm gonna go a little higher. Say 120 to 125 million for opening weekend, and its legs should be all right. Fantastic Four is gonna hurt, but I feel like its legs should be decent. I mean, Man of Steel was like low key front loaded, but it wasn't like too bad. It wasn't like Batman v Superman levels of front loaded. So I'm gonna say between 300 and 350, somewhere in that range, 300 to 350 million total. And yeah, I think that's it. And that's it for the weekend. Yep, just one movie. I'm really glad because I was really sick of doing these 5 movie weekends. They were killing me. So these 1 movie weekends, they're a godsend. But yeah, but next week I got 3 movies. I got Eddington, I Know What You Did Last Summer, and we got Smurfs. I really don't want to talk about Smurfs. That movie is that's a lethal dose of cringe right there. But I gotta talk about all 3 of them next week, so stay tuned for those videos. But yeah, that's it. That's all. Make sure to subscribe, like this video, leave a comment, turn on notifications, share the whole drill. You want to check out more videos like this? Got playlists on the homepage, all previous prediction videos I made this year, the past few years. You want to watch any of them, go right ahead. It's also box office, the canceled series, where I went over all the movies that were supposed to come out but didn't. I talked about this movie once, and that was when it got its release date. And this was back when it was called Superman Legacy, which I'm glad they changed the title because the title doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Maybe in terms of like the plot, because I've seen the movie, but I think just calling it Superman, it just sounds better. It's just cleaner. It's just like Superman Legacy, like it just, I don't know, it doesn't really sound right. So yeah, so I talked about that one time. That was episode 173. Yeah, 173. I talked about it alongside the Batman 2. So you want to watch that episode or any other episodes I've made, all 250 of them. You want to binge watch all of them from beginning to end. I highly suggest you do that, so go do it. There's also box office recaps where I go over the box office results for any particular month. June recap. I am intending to make that today or tomorrow. I'm not sure yet. Depends on circumstances, but probably I'll film it tonight. Maybe I'll just upload it like hella late in the evening. That might be what I'll do. But yeah, it will happen this weekend. That is a guarantee. It will happen. So stay tuned for that. But if you want, and my July recap, that'll be the second weekend of August. And that video is going to be very easy to make because not a whole lot of movies are coming out in July. So that's good for me. Less work. So yeah, stay tuned for that as well. But if you want to watch any of the past recap videos I made on the channel, you can go right ahead. And yeah, that's it. That's all. I am out. Goodbye.